Ambassador Vrex Tal of the Quartz Collective was having what humans would call a very bad day, except his species measured time in crystalline resonance cycles. And this particular cycle was resonating at frequencies that roughly translated to "someone please end my suffering." He clutched his 4th dose of zenithal anxiety suppressants in one of his 12 trembling appendages while frantically shuffling through humanity's membership application with the others. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Federation looked like someone had let a kindergarten class loose in a space station. Representatives from 417 different species were shouting, chittering, and in one case, emitting concerned pheromones that smelled distinctly like burnt rubber. The emergency session had been called after humanity's formal application for galactic membership had somehow triggered what could only be described as a galaxy-wide panic attack. Order. Order in the chamber. Wheezed Council Chairman Blorbinski, a slug-like creature whose authority was undermined somewhat by the fact that he left a trail of slime wherever he went and was currently stuck to his podium. "We are here to discuss the situation regarding the species that calls itself humanity." A collective shudder ran through the assembly. Several smaller representatives immediately began construction of what appeared to be emergency bunkers out of their briefing materials. Admiral Tentacles, whose name was spelled exactly like that because his species had a peculiar sense of humor, slammed 6 of his 8 arms on his desk simultaneously. "I've been saying this for months. We should classify them as a galactic threat and quarantine their entire solar system before they figure out faster than light travel." "They already figured out faster than light travel," Vrex Tal said miserably, consulting his notes. "They built it out of, let me check, yes, they built it out of duct tape and what they call elbow grease, whatever that means." The chamber erupted in panicked whispers. In the corner, Representative Squeakums from the Mouse Confederacy fainted directly into his water bowl. "Calm yourselves." Chairman Blorbinski attempted to restore order while secretly wondering if his life insurance policy covered death by Deathworld Species. "Ambassador Vrex Tal, please present the evidence we've compiled on these humans." Vrex Tal's crystalline structure dimmed noticeably. He'd been dreading this moment for weeks. "Very well. As you all know, we've been studying humanity for 3 standard galactic years now, ever since they were first discovered. The findings are..." He paused to take another anxiety suppressant. "The findings are disturbing." "How disturbing?" asked Councillor Flibbert, a nervous butterfly creature whose wings were already vibrating at panic frequencies. "They keep predators as companions," Vrex Tal said flatly. "For fun." The chamber fell silent except for the sound of Representative Squeakums hitting the floor again. "The initial contact report comes from Captain Fluffington of the research vessel Gentle Curiosity," Vrex Tal began, but his voice taking on the tone of someone reading a horror story to children. "Captain, would you care to share your experience?" A rabbit-like creature with unnaturally large ears stood up shakily. Captain Fluffington had chosen his name from a human children's book, thinking it sounded appropriately peaceful. He now regretted every life choice that had led to this moment. "We detected the 3rd planet in what they call the Sol system and prepared for standard first contact protocols," Captain Fluffington began, his voice barely above a whisper. "We expected to meet their apex predators, naturally. Instead, we found ourselves observing what appeared to be a peaceful gathering in something called a backyard." He shuddered at the memory. There was a family. They called themselves the Johnsons. They were having something called a barbecue, which involves setting food on fire and then eating it. But that wasn't the disturbing part. What was the disturbing part? Chairman Blorbinski asked, though he wasn't entirely sure he wanted to know. "They had tamed wolves," Captain Fluffington said, his ears drooping dramatically. "Massive, fanged predators that they called dogs and treated like family members. One of them, a golden-colored beast they called Buddy, was larger than most of our security personnel. And the humans were feeding it by hand." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Admiral Tentacles was frantically taking notes with all 8 arms. But it gets worse, Captain Fluffington continued. Their offspring, a small human they called Timmy, was wrestling with this apex predator. Wrestling. And the creature was wagging its tail. We later learned this was a sign of happiness, not territorial aggression as we initially theorized. Dear cosmic forces, wheezed Counselor Flibbert. They've psychologically broken their planet's predators into submission. That's what we thought initially, Captain Fluffington nodded miserably. But then we observed more closely. The humans weren't dominating these creatures through fear. They were bonding with them, showing affection. They had somehow convinced apex predators to love them voluntarily. The chamber was dead silent except for the occasional whimper from smaller delegates. The worst part came when we tried to scan their dwelling for other life forms, Captain Fluffington continued. We detected dozens of additional creatures living inside their home. Cats, they called them. Small, tiger-like predators with retractable claws and night vision. The humans allow these creatures to sleep in their beds, while they're unconscious and vulnerable. Representative Gurgleworth, whose species communicated primarily through stomach noises, let out what could only be described as the sound of existential dread. And then Captain Fluffington's voice broke. Then the tiny one escaped. The tiny one? A hamster. A small, fluffy creature they kept in what appeared to be a miniature prison. When it escaped, we prepared for evacuation, certain we were about to witness a prison break of a dangerous Deathworld predator. Instead, the entire family stopped their meal to gently recapture this creature, speaking to it in soft, soothing tones before returning it to what we now realize was not a prison, but a luxury habitat. Captain Fluffington sat down heavily. We fled immediately. Our xenobiologist spent 6 months in therapy after that encounter. Rex Towel cleared his throat, which sounded like wind chimes in a tornado. The next piece of evidence comes from our culinary anthropologist, Dr. Munchwagon. A round, cheerful-looking alien with what appeared to be 12 different mouths stood up, though he looked significantly less cheerful than his species normally did. Doctor. Now for new. Munchwagon had volunteered to study human food culture because his people were renowned throughout the galaxy for their sophisticated palates. He was now considering a career change. My fellow beings, Dr. Munchwagon began, I have witnessed horrors that will haunt me for the rest of my considerably long lifespan. Humans don't just eat food. They engage in what can only be described as chemical warfare against their own digestive systems. He activated a holographic display showing what appeared to be innocent red peppers. Several delegates immediately put on protective gear. These are called Carolina Reapers, Dr. Munchwagon continued. They register over 2.2 million Scoville heat units. For perspective, our own military uses capsaicin-based weapons that register at 50,000 Scoville units to incapacitate enemy forces. Humans eat these peppers for recreational purposes. A delegate from the Frozen Moon Collective actually started smoking from stress. I observed a human named Pete consume 3 of these weapons-grade peppers while commenting casually about the weather, Dr. Munchwagon continued. His only reaction was to mention that they had a nice kick and ask if anyone wanted to try his homemade salsa. Surely they must have some genetic immunity, suggested Counselor Wibblebonk from the Sensible Species Alliance. That's what we thought. Dr. Munchwagon shook his head sadly. But no, they feel the pain. They sweat, their eyes water, their vital signs spike to levels that would indicate severe distress in any rational species, and then they ask for seconds. The holographic display shifted to show a massive gathering of humans around steaming bowls. This is what they call a chili cook-off, Dr. Munchwagon explained. Hundreds of humans gather to compete in consuming increasingly lethal combinations of what they laughingly refer to as food. I witnessed beings voluntarily eating substances that would qualify as biological weapons under 17 different galactic conventions. Admiral Tentacles was writing furiously. So they're building immunity through gradual self-poisoning. It's a species-wide military conditioning program. That's not even the worst part, Dr. Munchwagon continued, his multiple mouths all frowning simultaneously. They also consume fermented plant matter that would kill most of our species, raw fish that's still actively decomposing, moldy cheese that's literally rotting as they eat it, and something called Rocky Mountain oysters, which aren't oysters and don't come from mountains, and I refuse to discuss what they actually are. He clicked to another image showing humans at what appeared to be a celebration. And they do all of this while consuming ethanol, a substance that would be considered an industrial solvent by most civilized species, but in sufficient quantities to impair their judgment and coordination. For fun. The chamber had gone completely quiet except for the sound of Representative Squeakums having what appeared to be a nervous breakdown in the corner. The final straw was when I attended what they call a barbecue competition, Dr. Munchwagon concluded. I watched a human named Big Jim consume something called a ghost pepper burger, while simultaneously drinking liquid that was literally on fire, and his only comment was that it could use more heat. He sat down heavily. I've requested a transfer to the Department of Peaceful Plant Studies. I can't take any more of this. Our next presenter is Professor Couch Potato from the Institute of Sedentary Sciences, Vrex Tal announced, consulting his notes with the enthusiasm of someone reading their own obituary. A large, blob-like creature that appeared to be melting slowly over his chair gestured weakly with what might have been an appendage. Professor Couch Potato was renowned throughout the galaxy for his research on the benefits of complete inactivity and had volunteered to study human exercise habits because he assumed it would be a short assignment. Esteemed colleagues, Professor Couch Potato wheezed, I have documented behavior so contrary to natural survival instincts that I questioned whether humans might actually be an entirely synthetic species designed for warfare. He activated a display showing humans in what appeared to be a torture chamber filled with mechanical devices. This is what they call a gym, the professor explained. Humans voluntarily enter these facilities to subject themselves to various forms of mechanical torture. They lift heavy objects repeatedly for no apparent purpose, run on mechanical treadmills like escaped laboratory specimens, and voluntarily stress their cardiovascular systems to near failure levels. Counselor Flibbert's wings were now vibrating so fast they were creating a small windstorm. Are they prisoners? Are they being forced to do this? No, Professor Couch Potato replied mournfully. They pay for the privilege. They actually exchange currency for the opportunity to torture themselves. And they seem happy about it. The display shifted to show humans stretching in impossible positions. This is something called yoga. Initially, I theorized it was a form of interrogation technique. As I observed humans contorting themselves into positions that would indicate severe joint damage. But further study revealed it's actually a relaxation method. They voluntarily dislocate themselves for stress relief. Admiral Tentacles looked up from his notes. What about their endurance capabilities? Ah yes, Professor Couch Potato's blob-like form shuddered. They engage in something called marathons. 26.2 miles of continuous running. For no reason. No one is chasing them, there's no emergency, they're not fleeing from predators. They just run for hours. And when they finish, instead of collapsing from exhaustion like any sensible being, they ask when the next one is scheduled. The display showed humans engaged in various extreme sports. And then there are the activities they do for what they call fun, Professor Couch Potato continued. Jumping out of perfectly functional aircraft with only fabric to prevent their deaths. Hurling themselves off tall structures attached to elastic cords. Surfing on frozen water down mountainsides at life-threatening speeds. Swimming with actual predators they call sharks. He paused to consume what appeared to be a stress relief beverage. I observed a human named Dave participate in something called CrossFit, the professor concluded. For 1 hour he lifted, ran, jumped, pulled, pushed, and moved in ways that clearly indicated preparation for some sort of apocalyptic survival scenario. When I asked him why he did this, he said, and I quote, "Beach season is coming up, and I want to look good in my swimsuit." The professor's blob-like form seemed to deflate further. I've since transferred to the Department of Cosmic Napping. I can't handle this level of voluntary suffering. Rex Tal's crystalline structure was now glowing a color that roughly translated to "please end my existence." Our final presenter is Dr. Pillow Thoughts from the Sleep Research Division. An extremely tired-looking alien with enormous eyes and what appeared to be permanent coffee stains shuffled to the podium. Dr. Pillow Thoughts belonged to a species that never slept, which made him uniquely qualified to study rest patterns, though he'd recently developed insomnia from stress, which was ironic in ways that hurt to contemplate. "Fellow beings," Dr. Pillow Thoughts began, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much, "I have studied the human sleep cycle, and I can conclusively state that these creatures are even more dangerous when they appear to be at their most vulnerable." The chamber leaned forward with the collective dread of a horror movie audience. "Humans voluntarily enter a state of near-complete unconsciousness for approximately 8 hours every 24-hour cycle," he explained. "During this time, they're motionless, unaware of their surroundings, and completely defenseless. Any rational species would see this as a fatal evolutionary flaw." "But not humans?" asked Chairman Blorbinsky. "Not humans," Dr. Pillow Thoughts confirmed grimly. "First, they've somehow evolved to make themselves stronger and more dangerous after periods of unconsciousness. Sleep deprivation actually makes them less efficient, more aggressive, and unpredictable. It's as if they've weaponized their own vulnerability." He activated a display showing brain scans. "During their unconscious periods, their brains remain active, processing information and running what they call dreams. I initially theorized these were tactical planning sessions or combat simulations. When I studied their dream research, I discovered they solve complex problems, process emotional trauma, and even engage in creative endeavors while completely unconscious." The display shifted to show humans in various sleep positions. "But here's the truly terrifying part," Dr. Pillow Thoughts continued. "They maintain defensive capabilities even while unconscious. I observed a phenomenon called sleep talking, where they communicate with unknown entities while unaware. Sleepwalking, where they perform complex tasks while their conscious minds are offline. And most disturbing of all, they can instantly transition from unconscious to fully combat-ready in seconds." He clicked to a new image showing a human parent. "I witnessed a human female transition from deep sleep to full alertness and mobility in 0.7 seconds when her offspring made a distress sound. 0.7 seconds. Our best military units require at least 30 seconds to achieve combat readiness from rest position." Admiral Tentacles was now taking notes with all 8 arms and what appeared to be his tail. "And then there's their chemical dependency," Dr. Pillow Thoughts continued, his enormous eyes somehow managing to look even more tired. "They've developed a civilization-wide addiction to a stimulant called caffeine. Not only does this make them more alert and aggressive, but they've somehow incorporated this chemical dependence into their social rituals and economic systems." He showed images of what appeared to be coffee shops. "These are temples to their chemical deity," he explained. "Every human settlement contains multiple locations where they gather to consume increasingly potent doses of this stimulant while planning their daily activities. I observed humans consuming beverages with enough caffeine to power small spacecraft, then calmly discussing their plans to engage in the voluntary torture they call exercise or the self-poisoning they call trying that new Thai place." Dr. Pillow Thoughts paused to consume what was obviously his own caffeine addiction talking. "The final evidence that convinced me humans are the Apex Deathworld species came when I studied their reaction to sleep disruption. Instead of becoming weakened and vulnerable like any rational being, they become increasingly unpredictable and dangerous. A sleep-deprived human is apparently capable of acts of illogical creativity and problem-solving that defy conventional understanding." He sat down with the finality of someone who'd seen too much of the universe and found it wanting. The Grand Council chamber had fallen into a silence so complete that you could hear Representative Squeakums having what appeared to be an existential crisis behind his water bowl. Chairman Blorbinski's slime trail had formed complex patterns on the floor that roughly translated to "why me?" in several ancient languages. So, Chairman Blorbinski said slowly, "To summarize, humans voluntarily cohabit with predators, consume poison for pleasure, engage in ritualistic self-torture for entertainment, and have evolved to be most dangerous when they appear most vulnerable." "That's correct," Rextal confirmed, his crystalline structure now flickering between 17 different colors of distress. "And they want to join our peaceful Galactic Federation." "Also correct." Admiral Tentacles raised 6 arms simultaneously. "I motion that we immediately classify Earth as a quarantine zone and pretend we never found them." "Seconded," shouted approximately 300 delegates at once. "All in favor of the pretend Earth doesn't exist protocol?" Chairman Blorbinski called. Just as 416 hands, tentacles, appendages, and pseudopods were about to rise in unanimous agreement, the chamber's communication system crackled to life. Hello? This is Ambassador Jake Murphy from Earth. I'm still waiting outside in my ship. I brought donuts and coffee for everyone. Is now a good time to talk?" The chamber erupted in panic. Several smaller delegates began constructing what appeared to be emergency fortifications. Representative Squeakums fainted so hard he bounced. "He's here," Admiral Tentacles hissed. "The apex predator is here." Chairman Blorbinski was frantically trying to locate his emergency protocols manual while simultaneously attempting to hide under his podium. "What do we do? What's the procedure for this?" "Maybe if we're very quiet, he'll go away?" suggested Counselor Flibbert hopefully. "Hello?" Jake's voice came through the speakers again, cheerfully oblivious to the terror he was inspiring. "I can see all your ships, so I know you're in there. Look, I don't mean to be pushy, but I've been sitting out here for 3 hours and I'm starting to get a little concerned. Also, these donuts are getting cold." Rextal looked around at his fellow council members, all of whom were avoiding eye contact. With the resigned air of someone who'd drawn the short straw in the galaxy's worst lottery, he activated the communication system. "Greetings, human," he said, his voice only shaking slightly. "We are prepared to discuss your species' application for membership." "Oh, fantastic." Jake's enthusiasm was audible even through the static. "I have to say, you guys really know how to make an impression with this whole giant space station thing. Very official. Very intimidating. I love it." The chamber fell silent at the word intimidating. The idea that humans found the Galactic Federation intimidating was somehow both reassuring and deeply concerning. "Before we proceed," Admiral Tentacles interrupted, "we must ask about your species' relationship with apex predators." "Our what now?" Jake sounded confused. "Oh, you mean like tigers and bears?" "Yeah, we generally try to leave them alone. Though my neighbor has this cat that I swear is plotting world domination." "But you cohabitate with wolves," Captain Fluffington squeaked. "Wolves? No, we have dogs. Very different thing. Although my brother's German Shepherd does get a little dramatic about bath time." Dr. Munchwagon leaned forward desperately. "What about your consumption of chemical weapons?" "Chemical weapons?" Jake laughed. "Buddy, I work in accounting. The strongest chemical I handle is coffee, and even that's usually decaf." "The Carolina Reapers," Dr. Munchwagon insisted. "The ritualistic consumption of poison." "Oh, you mean spicy food?" Jake chuckled. "Yeah, some people like it hot. Not really my thing, though. I'm more of a mild salsa guy. Too much spice gives me heartburn." Professor Couch Potato struggled to raise what might have been a questioning appendage. The systematic physical torture programs. Are you talking about gyms? Jake asked. Yeah, my doctor says I should exercise more. Something about cholesterol. I keep meaning to join one, but you know how it is. Always seems like too much work. Dr. Pillow Thoughts looked up hopefully. The chemical dependency? The combat-ready sleep patterns? Well, I do love my morning coffee, Jake admitted. And I'm pretty good at waking up when my alarm goes off. Though I'll be honest, I'm not exactly what you'd call a morning person. Chairman Blorbinski found his voice. But you're from a death world. You're apex predators. You voluntarily consume poison and torture yourselves for entertainment. There was a pause. Then Jake started laughing. Oh man, did you guys read our application? We were totally joking about that whole Apex Deathworld Species thing. My buddy Dave dared me to put it in there. We thought it sounded cool. The silence in the chamber was so profound that it achieved its own gravitational field. You were joking? Rex Tal whispered. Yeah, we do that a lot. Humans are big on humor. We figured you'd get a kick out of it. Did you guys actually take it seriously? Because that's hilarious. 417 of the galaxy's most sophisticated life forms stared at each other in the kind of silence usually reserved for the moments just before civilization's collapse. So Jake continued cheerfully, about those donuts. They're glazed and I got some with sprinkles. Who wants coffee? And that's how humanity became the first species in galactic history to join the Galactic Federation through a combination of accidentally terrifying the entire universe and bringing really good donuts to their membership interview. The Apex Deathworld Species classification remains in their official file to this day, mostly because nobody wants to admit they fell for what was essentially a cosmic prank. Jake got his membership approved unanimously, though several delegates voted while hiding under their desks.